The dark psychology of power. Why it changes people. Picture this. A kind, humble teacher gets promoted to principal. Within 6 months, everyone hates them. A friendly coworker becomes your boss and suddenly treats you like you're invisible. Your caring friend gets a little fame on social media and stops returning your calls. What happened? Did power change them? Or did it just reveal who they always were? Here's the disturbing truth. Power doesn't just change people. It rewires their brain. And the scariest part? It can happen to anyone. Yes, even you. Even me. Today, we're diving into the dark psychology of power, and I promise you'll never look at authority figures the same way again. Let's get into it.
So what exactly happens in the brain when someone gains power? Scientists at UC Berkeley conducted a fascinating study. They gave participants a small taste of power, just the feeling of being in charge, and then monitored their behavior. The results were shocking. People with power, even temporary power, showed less empathy. Their ability to read emotions on other people's faces literally decreased. They interrupted more. They talked over others. They took more risks without considering consequences. And here's the kicker. This happened in less than an hour. The researcher, Dacher Keltner, called it the power paradox. The skills that help you gain power, empathy, collaboration, listening to others, are the exact same skills that deteriorate once you have it. It's like a cruel joke the universe plays on us. Brain scans reveal something even more disturbing. When people feel powerful, the part of their brain responsible for empathy and social understanding actually shows reduced activity. It's called mirror neuron dysfunction. Essentially, power makes it harder for your brain to put yourself in someone else's shoes. You stop seeing people as people and start seeing them as tools, obstacles, or just background noise. History is littered with examples of good people corrupted by power. Take Robert Mugabe. He started as a hero, a freedom fighter who liberated Zimbabwe from colonial rule. People loved him. He preached equality, education, and prosperity. But once he had absolute power, he became a dictator, responsible for economic collapse, mass violence, and the deaths of thousands. Or look at Napoleon Bonaparte. He rose to power promising liberty, equality, and fraternity for all French citizens. Within years, he crowned himself emperor and dragged Europe into endless wars that killed millions. The man who fought against tyranny became a tyrant himself. Even in smaller settings, this pattern repeats. The Stanford Prison Experiment in 1971 showed us how quickly ordinary college students turned into brutal guards when given authority over prisoners. The experiment had to be shut down after just 6 days because the guards became so sadistic. These weren't bad people. They were normal students, randomly assigned a role. But power transformed them. So why does this happen? Psychologists have identified several mechanisms at play. First, there's something called illusory superiority. When you have power over others, your brain starts believing you're actually superior to them. Not just in position, but in intelligence, morality, and worth. You begin to think your success is entirely due to your own brilliance, ignoring luck, privilege, or the help you received along the way. Second, power creates psychological distance. When you're above someone in a hierarchy, you literally start seeing them as more distant, less human. Studies show that powerful people are more likely to objectify others, to see them as means to an end, rather than individuals with their own feelings and struggles. Third, there's the accountability problem. The more power you have, the fewer people can hold you accountable. Without accountability, there's no brake on your behavior. You start testing boundaries. You take shortcuts. You break small rules and realize nothing happens. So you break bigger ones. Fourth, power amplifies pre-existing traits. If you have even a tiny narcissistic tendency, power will magnify it tenfold. If you have a slight sense of entitlement, power will transform it into full-blown arrogance. Power doesn't create these traits from nothing, but it feeds them like gasoline on a fire. You don't need to be a dictator or emperor to see this in action. Look at corporate CEOs. Research shows that CEOs display psychopathic traits at rates 4 times higher than the general population. Not because psychopaths seek power, though some do, but because the power itself encourages psychopathic behavior, manipulation, lack of empathy, ruthless decision-making. Social media influencers provide another example. Many start out genuine, relatable, and kind. But as their follower count grows, their behavior changes. They stop engaging with fans. They become defensive about criticism. Some develop God complexes, believing their opinions on everything matter simply because they're famous. The power of attention corrupts just as thoroughly as political or economic power. Even in relationships, power dynamics play out. The partner who earns more money, the parent with authority over children, the older sibling. Power imbalances exist everywhere. And if left unchecked, they breed resentment, control, and emotional abuse. How do you know if power is changing you or someone you know?
Watch for these red flags. You stop listening. You interrupt constantly because you believe your time and thoughts are more valuable than others. You make exceptions for yourself. Rules apply to everyone else, but you're special. You're too important, too busy, too valuable to follow the same standards. You surround yourself only with yes people. Anyone who disagrees with you is labeled disloyal, stupid, or jealous. You curate an echo chamber that reinforces your worldview. You stop saying thank you or please. Basic courtesy feels beneath you now. Why should you show gratitude to people who are just doing what you pay them to do? You feel entitled to things others have to earn. Special treatment, better seats, cutting in line. You deserve it because of who you are. You rationalize unethical behavior. The ends justify the means. You're doing bad things for good reasons. Everyone else would do the same in your position. If any of this sounds familiar, either in yourself or someone close to you, power is doing its dark work. Here's the hopeful part. Not everyone succumbs. Some people wield power responsibly for decades without losing their humanity. So what's their secret? Research points to a few protective factors. First, strong personal values developed before gaining power. If you have a deeply rooted moral code, it's harder for power to erode it. Second, maintaining relationships with people who knew you before you had power. They keep you grounded. They'll call you out when you're acting like a jerk. Third, practicing gratitude and humility deliberately. Powerful people who regularly remind themselves of their privilege, luck, and the help they received are less likely to develop superiority complexes. Fourth, systems of accountability. Even if you're the boss, create structures where people can challenge your decisions safely. Nelson Mandela is often cited as someone who resisted power's corruption. After 27 years in prison, he became president of South Africa with immense power and popular support. He could have sought revenge. He could have clung to power for life. Instead, he chose reconciliation, served one term, and stepped down peacefully. He maintained relationships with old friends who treated him as an equal. He listened to critics. He stayed humble. But Mandela is rare. For most people, power is a test they eventually fail. Here's what we need to accept. The problem isn't just bad people getting power. The problem is that power itself is corrupting. It changes brain chemistry, alters perception, and erodes empathy in predictable, measurable ways. This means two things. First, We need to design systems that limit and distribute power rather than concentrating it in individual hands. Checks and balances exist for a reason. Term limits exist for a reason. Democratic oversight exists for a reason. Second, if you ever find yourself in a position of power, you need to actively fight against its psychological effects. You need to build in accountability. You need to seek out criticism. You need to spend time with people who see you as an equal, not a superior. You need to practice empathy deliberately, because it won't come naturally anymore. And most importantly, you need to recognize that you're not immune. The moment you think, "This won't happen to me," is the moment you're most vulnerable. So there it is, the dark psychology of power. It's not a moral failing of weak individuals. It's a fundamental flaw in how human brains respond to authority and control. Power doesn't reveal character, it transforms it. The kind teacher, the humble coworker, the caring friend, they didn't become different people. Power changed their brain, and their brain changed them. The question isn't whether power corrupts. The question is whether we're brave enough to admit that it would corrupt us too, and whether we're willing to build a world that protects us from ourselves. Before you go, I want you to think about this. If you suddenly became incredibly wealthy and powerful tomorrow, what's the first thing you'd do differently? And be honest with yourself. Would you still treat everyone the same way, or would something change? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. And if this video made you think twice about power, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into human psychology. See you in the next one. Stay humble out there